Hey there, everybody. In Gettysburg here. Let's see what we can see here. There's a fence. There's the highway. Somewhere behind me, between the cornfield there and you see the buildings all the way down there to the right in that tree line. Somewhere behind me, right in that direction, is the direction from which Pickett's charge was led. It should formally be named the Pickett Pettigrew. I always forget the third guy's name. I'm not a battlefield historian. You know that there were three generals leading the charge, but this is where more or less the rebel advance, the whole rebel thrust was eventually thwarted, and they began to retreat over the bridge. I'm afraid that I've been a little, well, if I posted these videos, which I may not have, I'm not sure what I'm going to post yet, but the videos I've posted so far are probably a bit on the preachy side, which of course nobody really cares for. I've mentioned that I see this conflict and most conflicts quite differently than a lot of people. I've mentioned, get the screen to light up. I've mentioned kind of plainly that you know, all wars are bankers' wars, and that you know, simple sentence deserves a lot more behind it. But again, I don't have a lot of time. I'm not here to, you know, explain everything. But I just can't, all that I can help but think about. There's the Kadoorie house over there. All I can help think about when I'm here, I've been here quite a handful of times now. In fact, I wore this shirt once or in some of the last videos, and I'm wearing it again today, so oh well. Plus my folks gave it to me, so make them happy. But all I keep thinking about is how we got here. And everybody, you know, likes to think it's a pretty simple and straightforward story, and it's not. But this, so I'm going to side skip the primary reasons that most folks think got us in this conflict, and that I think got us in this conflict. I'm going to kind of blow by that and address kind of like the methods. You know, one thing I keep thinking of is Stanley Milgram's experiments. I don't want to go into a big diatribe about the behavioralists, but it should go without saying that the work of Pavlov, Skinner, and folks like that, you know, this goes on, and it segues into eugenics and folks from Johns Hopkins, but that's you know, kind of sidetracking. I keep thinking about Milgram's experiments, right, and the adage that now it's incorrectly attributed to Voltaire, but there's an adage basically that says something like, you know, those who believe absurdities will be or may be willing to commit atrocities, which I think is generally true, and is a good way to kind of encapsulate and think about it as a perspective how we got here. Most people, you know, that there's self-interest, right? But, you know, outside of that and basic needs, you know, are decent people and aren't extremely vile and violent, much less willing to take up arms against their own countrymen, without a little bit more. Most people just aren't. That's what these experiments and behavioralists set out, you know, to go into more detail about and to understand more about, and to, sad to say, kind of perfect, and then that dovetails with MK Ultra. But I keep thinking about Milgram's experiments. I keep thinking about just basic, you know, polarity. False dichotomies, you know. We are back pitched into a corner again where the folks up on high are having us think that, you know, if you don't agree with us, you're X, and if you do agree with us, then you're Y. I would you know, if I'm going to preach at all, you know, that's not a good way to think in general or to see the world, but it is a good way to go down a slippery slope on any scale, really. I've mentioned some things in a few videos by now which go against the grain and aren't mainstream views, and I'm sure just because of that, regardless of the exact nature of the view, have been taken as alt-right, XYZ, ultra-conservative, or what have you. I'm quite sure. That's fine with me. I really don't care. But the point is, whatever side of the fence that you sit on, think about the other side. And let me ask you, I mean, is your next door neighbor a raging January 6th or the people that wear all black, the alt-right Antifa? Is that your next door neighbor? Is that kind of person the deli clerk at your grocery store? Is that kind of person your best friend? Is that kind of person, like, say, the worker next to you in the next cubicle at work, or what have you? Is that person, your normal Uber driver? Because I've asked you about, 5 random routine people now, and if you can say no, 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 then that should tell you something, which is basically stop listening to people that are trying to make you think that it's always a black and white X or Y situation, because that's never the case. That's never the case. That's never the case. And the last thing that I keep thinking about, okay, going back to MK Ultra, so I'm not sure if I did this video yet, but I've got to move through this fast. But I was recently at Macho State Forest, about 25 minutes northwest of here, and it turned out that they had a WW interrogation prisoner camp for German prisoners. Now, it's very rare because this prison camp actually says explicitly that it was used to interrogate Germans mostly, and Japanese, for the purpose of delving into information that they may have on a few different things, which I've pretty much already mentioned: advanced weaponry, you name it, conventional, whatever, tanks, ballistics, of course the rocket engines go without saying, as they all went to NASA and the NSA, biological weapons, etc., and so forth. Now, MK Ultra is kind of again a big umbrella description or thing. It also involves mind control, which dovetails with torture, which dovetails with things like Guantanamo. Now, the reason I'm bringing up mind control, you can call it what you want. You can call it social programming, conditioning, whatever you choose to call it, whatever you call it in college or psych class or sociology, it doesn't matter to me. I lost my train of thought. Shoot. Look, we don't, so the point behind MK Ultra, everybody thought, okay, let's go with the common knowledge about the programmable assassin, okay? That's the story that everybody understands about the Manchurian Candidate, Frank Sinatra. Fast forward to, 2004, Denzel Washington, which was really fun, by the way. Anyways, look, they absolutely have been working on that for decades, And I hate to tell you that their progress has been a lot more substantial than you would ever want to imagine, admit, or think is possible. I'm going to wrap this up real quick because my point here with the last point with social conditioning or mind control, going back to, this all connects, going back to Stanley Milgram, to see what other people might be willing to do to other people, okay? Everybody thinks that was only in the regards of a programmable assassin, i.e. that kind of work was being done to see if they could apply it to an individual. What they did not understand was that it was also being done to apply to groups. Medium-sized groups, big groups, nations, right? Those ought to give you some things to think about when it comes to how we got into a certain conflict, because it was not as easy as anybody, almost, anybody out there imagines. It was very complex. There was so much going behind the scene, like I've mentioned, with banking, with the Central National Bank, the income tax coming into view, so on and so forth, and then eventually escalating all the way up to the Federal Reserve Act in 1913. These are monumentous events. These are events that have basically made us all slaves. These are, and I'm telling you this as an American, these are things that made this nation for the first time a debtor nation and cemented its status as a debtor nation. And now we live in a world where this world cannot run properly or as it's intended to function without the use of debt as an instrument. I do economics too, like I've said. I do lots of things, and that's kind of my problem. You know, I'm not a super specialist in many things, maybe a couple things, but just some things to think about. I think that are kind of important. I've got to wrap this up. This may be my last video. I might do a couple more, we'll see. But I'd really like folks to consider this stuff. I don't want to preach. I don't want to tell you what to believe. I just want people to think for themselves, to think critically, and remember, we're all Americans, and you take the strings away, you know, we're all gonna be much better off. Anyways, till next one.